Alright, Logic fans, welcome back to our third video on section 3.1. It takes a little bit to introduce the idea of syntax, so in future videos we'll be introducing new rules a little bit faster, but for the first time it's good to take your time with it and really see it, so do try the problems in the book. Anyways, this is 3.1c, and I've got here on the screen for you two new rules that I want to introduce. So one of them is the rule addition. So if you've got P, you can infer, whoops, and I've got it wrong here, you can infer P or Q, okay? So if you've got any old string here, you can write down that string, wedge, whatever you want. Any other legitimate string there. Anything else, and some people think, wait, I can just add whatever I want. Yeah, but only with or, and if you think about it semantically, it actually does work, right? If P is true, then anything P or Q, P or anything is going to be true because a disjunction is true, provided at least one of the disjuncts is true. And since from one we know that P is true, this whole thing's going to be true. So yeah, you can add whatever you like, all right? But we are thinking about this syntactically, but still, it's just sort of an informal justification, okay? And it can be anything. It could be some big whole long line. It could be just A by itself, whatever. Okay, it could be not A. It could be any complex thing you want. Okay. All right. So that's the rule addition. Also, we've got the rule idempotence, Latin, literally for power of sameness. So if you've got a disjunction, PVP. Okay. So it's got to be the same thing on both sides of an or. Then you can infer this thing by itself, and usually we don't write out idempotence, we'll just put idemp, okay, on one, all right, on line one. So you can actually detach the P from a disjunction provided there's a P on either side of it, okay? So let's try a couple of examples to make sure you really get how idempotence is supposed to work. So each of these three cases here, here's a case, here's a case, here's a case, uses idempotence. In which cases is the use of idempotence legitimate, and in which cases is it illegitimate? Prohibited or allowed? Legitimate or illegitimate? Permissible or impermissible for each of the three cases? Pause now. Okay, so we're going to go through these together. So the first case is not allowed because it's not the same thing on both sides. It would have to be like that, and it's not. It's B, okay? So this is impermissible. Do not do this. This is not allowed, okay? Criminal. Don't do it. All right. Now, what about in this case? Is that allowed? Yes, this is absolutely okay. Okay, so this is A-okay. All right, you can do it. That's allowed, so go ahead and feel free to do it. What about here? Is this allowed or not allowed? This is not allowed. Don't do it. It has to be the same thing on either side, and it's not here, okay? So that's how you're supposed to understand the rule of idempotence. Okay, so let's recap the rules that we covered in today's lesson, and these are the rules that you're going to have to use in the exercises, and I'm going to give you one last example where you have to put them all to work, or a combination of them to work to get the solution in a second. But the rules that we covered today are Simp, Conj, DS, Add, and Idemp, okay? And you'll find them in the front flap of your text. And if you're in a class with me, I will provide to you a sort of little cheat sheet that has them all listed and what exactly they say, okay? But you can find that in the front flap of the book. And these are the rules we used for today: Simp, Conj, Disjunctive Syllogism, Addition, and the Law of Idempotence, or the Rule of Idempotence in this case. So let's try one last syntactic deduction here before we close out and you move on to the homework exercises. Okay, so here's your problem. You're given 4 strings to work with at the outset. So not T or A, U or not B, not U and H, not T and not I. And from those 4 givens, you're supposed to syntactically deduce this string. It can be done. It's not a trick, okay? It's not like it's something that cannot be done using the rules, and it can be done using only these rules as well. So pause now, give this a try. I'll come back and give you some hints along the way. Okay, so it's time for a hint, and all I've done here is I've gotten you set up with your table. So I've got all the premises lined up, and then I've got the conclusion you're supposed to get to down here as a reminder, and these are the rules you're allowed to use. And you've got to start manipulating these to get this. Now, let me say this at the outset. There are different ways of obtaining the answer that are correct. So just because you didn't do it in my order or my way doesn't mean you got it wrong, okay? There are different ways of doing these deductions. So pause from here and see how you do. Okay, so look, one thing you might do just strategically is you might just start with like, okay, well, Simp's a pretty easy rule. I don't know if this is the right thing to do or not, but I'm going to go ahead and do it just because it gets me something new to work with. So this was Simp on line 3. Okay, I can also use Simp on line 4. Okay, and that's going to get me not T. And that's Simp on line 4. And again, I don't necessarily know if that's going to lead anywhere, but I've got some new stuff to work with here, which is kind of nice. And again, if you did it in a different order, did something else, it may very well be legitimate and you did everything just fine. But let's see if you can pause from here and see if you can make some progress on this way of doing it. Okay, so something to think about for you is that notice if you just look down your rationale line, it'll tell you which lines you've used. So we've done something with line 3 and we've done something with line 4, but we haven't used line 1 and we haven't used line 2. So we might look for a combination between some of this new stuff here and the lines we haven't used yet. In particular, you know, 6 and 1 seem to have something in common. Say it out loud. They have T. They even have the not T in common. Similarly, lines 2 and 5 seem to have something in common, namely U. That raises the question, is there a rule of inference that allows us to exploit the commonality between, say, line 2 and line 5, or the commonality between line 1 and line 6? Is there a rule that allows us to capitalize on that similarity, to combine them some way? And indeed there is, okay? So, for example, if we're looking at lines 1 and line 6, okay, they combine using disjunctive syllogism. So disjunctive syllogism on lines 1 and 6, what does that yield? Disjunctive syllogism on lines 1, this guy here, and this guy here. And this guy here. What does it yield? Well, it yields A. Okay. Similarly, what does disjunctive syllogism on lines 5 and 2 yield? Okay, and again, I don't care about the order you write the 2 and the 5 in, but line 2 is this, line 5 is this. How do they combine with disjunctive syllogism? What does it yield? Well, it allows you to write down this guy here, which is not B. Okay, and so look at this. We've got all this new material, and it's kind of interesting. Now, here's a key problem-solving technique, okay, I really want you to take to heart. Every now and then, you should have a look at what you're trying to get to. Okay, and if we look at what we're trying to get to, this is kind of neat. We've got A and not B. Well, I can get that from these two parts, right? I can get A and not B. So I'm sort of looking at where I'm trying to get, and I'm just going to say, okay, how can I use my rules to build this thing? Well, I'm not 100% sure yet, but I know I can build this part of it, and that's conj on lines 7 and 8. Okay, now, pause now and see if you can't apply one of our rules to get this whole thing by itself. It's a little bit of a trick here. Pause now. Okay, so it can be obtained here. This is really interesting. You can get this whole thing as is, just like that. Let's see if I can't get it on one line for us to read. There we go, and we got it. And what we used here was the rule add to line 9. Okay, so this was, I just added this whole part onto what we had in line 9. And yes, you can add whatever you want, however big, however horrible. Okay, and that's what the rule allows you to do. Okay, Logic fans, I hope you found this helpful. The only way you're going to really get this stuff down is if you're trying and taking seriously the exercises and the practice problems in the text. So make sure you're setting aside time for plenty of practice for this material, and we'll catch you on the next videos 3.2. Have a good one.